Hello, welcome to Tuesday at Ramsbury House. Today, Going to Ground is brought to you by Puritan Soap. Friends, nothing washes whiter. Now, it's possible that some of you may be thinking about praying a little more in these restricted days, or praying for the first time if you've never done so. Although it may sound odd saying this as a bishop, I've never considered myself to be an especially good prayer. I have a mind like a cat. Place it on a chair and it'll jump off immediately and wander away. And so I've always needed to use a structure for doing so. I use the Book of Common Prayer, the 1662 Book of Common Prayer. Mainly I think, well, partly because the words are beautiful and lyrical, but they also never wear out. They're capable of extremely high mileages, and for centuries, from the plague to the present day, these words have sustained people in our country, and they continue to do so. So I use parts of it. I don't feel the need to use all of each service, but I use morning prayer as a guide for my own prayers, and it really helps to know that others over the years have prayed this in all kinds of difficult situations. Part of the joy of using the prayer book is its language, as I say. This is a line from Psalm 102. The Psalms were the kind of hymn book or the poetry book of the Old Testament. And it's describing loneliness and isolation. I am become like a pelican in the wilderness, and like an owl that is in the desert. I have watched, and am even as it were a sparrow that sitteth alone upon the housetop. I've started to notice birds rather more in the last few days, doing what we were talking about yesterday, looking at what is under my nose. And I wanted to read you this morning a piece that I wrote last week about a bird that is hard to miss, although it's really rare, and it's the Great Bustard, which from its hilarious name to its ridiculous call is a preposterous piece of creation. And it's pretty much the last thing that I did before isolating, to go on a remarkable visit to see those who are conserving it. And so I thought I'd read it to you this morning. It's called Pelican in the Wilderness. We have a dehumanization suit, advises my companion. I am with David Waters, Executive Officer for the Great Bustard Group, the pioneering Wiltshire charity that has doggedly succeeded in reintroducing the world's heaviest flying bird to Salisbury Plain, nearly 200 years after the last poor specimen was stuffed and shot. The suit, he explains, here in the group's compound near Enford, is donned in order to feed and rear the chicks without being identifiably human, achieved in part by its colour scheme. Neither his Land Rover nor the hammering gunfire from the Challenger tanks of the King's Royal Hussars alarms these birds, as would a watchful human form, and you can understand them being a little wary. Mayors of Salisbury traditionally feasted on bustard, roast bustard, and it's the county's emblem, which now struts at the centre of Wiltshire's flag against green and white arcs of chalk downland. It is also engraved on the cover of Birds of Wiltshire from 1887 by parson naturalist, antiquarian and sometime vicar of Yatesbury, just down the road, the Reverend A.C. Smith. Despite the bird having then been extinct for over half a century, Smith nevertheless devotes to it some 26 pages. Boyhood outrage against the dodo, or about the dodo, was for David Waters the spring from which his own interest arose, quickened on finding a British equivalent on his doorstep. while the Great Bustard is about the same height, the male standing at about 3 foot. Its huge, angelic 8 foot wingspan is incomparable. Waters' campaign, involving 10 years in the Russian countryside sourcing eggs, began in 2004, and his patient tenacity has resulted in there being now about 100 bustards on the plain, with more added each year on soft release. The avian equivalent, he explains, of allowing your teenagers gradually to stray from home until they don't return. Inevitably, some are snatched by foxes, although pleasingly they can outrun Reynard at speeds of up to 30 miles per hour. And others fly away. One went to the Loire Valley, yet homed again to Wiltshire, another to Toulouse, where he remains en vacances. But within minutes of turning onto prohibited central ranges, we are able to locate a drove of about 30 great bustards, noticeable in a rape field half a mile away by a semaphore of white flashes as the male bustard's springtime mating display begins. Apart from their airborne reputation, they are also known for extreme sexual dimorphism, not a phrase I'd come across before, such that males can grow 4 or 5 times the size of the female. Viewed through a telescope, this contrast is clear as the rear of one beer moth erupts into a milky froth of tail feathers. I am become like a pelican in the wilderness, writes the psalmist in the Book of Common Prayer, and like an owl that is in the desert. I have watched, and am even as it were a sparrow that sitteth alone upon the housetop. The remoteness of birds as a motif for our self-isolation is worth wondering upon in this uncertain season, as too is their mysterious resilience. God bless you as you go to ground.